And welcome back, everyone. As we said, the situation's still uncertain in Ferguson, Missouri today. The Attorney General on the ground in that beleaguered city. And we want to get to your phone calls right now. And really, I want to know what has bothered you most, obviously beyond the obvious, a loss of a life here. But what else? Let's go to Courtney, who's been waiting patiently on the line with us from Brooklyn. Courtney, thanks for calling. Go right ahead.
Good evening, gentlemen. I just want to be really brief. I think there's just too much on both sides. Rioting is done all around the world when there's people are trying to rise up against injustice, and there's going to be opportunists who take advantage with the looting and the violence. For people, for conservatives, some whites, because we do have whites who are supporting us, like Lee Levin of AM New York, who wrote a piece yesterday, for them to just focus on that and not the issue at hand that a young man was killed. I think that's it's something that's really an underlying issue. What's wrong with America, when we have to spend so much instead of focusing on the real facts. And then I just want to defend the journalist Lemon. Listen, I think he was justified in doing what he did because, like he said, what's happening off camera, if that's happening on camera, and the cops already had told him to go to that location and then move them again. So I think it's only right for him to even say that there's
Courtney, first of all, great call, thank you. And it's not that. Listen, it's a moving line where the job starts and stops. My only point is, when you're there, your job is to get the reaction of the community. It's not. I don't really care how you feel as the reporter. I want to know how the community feels. And you just parachuted in, like all of us at the table, into a Ferguson and the rest. Let me hear from somebody who's there about why they're sitting out in the heat here and why they're protesting and why they're risking arrest. That's what I wanted to hear. Let's go to Kim in New Jersey. Kim, you're on the line.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Well, what bothers me most about this issue that's going on is the underlying root sickness. And it's not just, spouting racial epithets. And yes, there is a lot of that going on. Our country was founded on how we've destroyed many lives, for hundreds of years, and Jim Crow and so forth and so on. This, to me, seems like, even though we have wonderful policing and people that are there, but that's a new place now where people that have hate in their heart that are continuing to do these things to people. And I just think that it's very, very sad that they're hiding in the police department now. And it's like the law has given them the license to do the things that they couldn't do outright before in time past, as we've known.
I just would hesitate, Kim, just a little in that this isn't like the Garner case where we saw the video, and I think people can draw their own informed conclusions to this. We know certain facts, that it appears that there was 6 shots fired, and at least that killed Mr. Brown, and he was unarmed. That much we know. Certainly, I don't think even the most hardened person is going to think that the police department handled it the right way by trying to disperse Mr. Brown, by releasing the videotape of what happened in that store when it had no bearing on what happened on the streets when he was shot and killed, and all the rest. But let's hold off here until we convict this officer, until we get all the facts.
Kim is right in that racial issues are one of the open wounds that this country has always had, and we have never healed it. We've never come close to it, and it does keep popping up in new areas and with new participants, unfortunately.
Dom, every time somebody says we're getting closer, and then you see this and everything just moves back out and says, you rightly say, you guys, you don't know. You haven't walked a mile in my steps. It's not the same thing as much as you think you know. You don't know. And then when people throw out blanket statements that all the cops are out, just looking for a reason to get the black guy, that's not remotely true. Even Al Sharpton today said that, not all cops, in fact, not the vast majority of cops are good cops here. But, and then what we had after, which I think is a totally legitimate point. Let's see what Dana has to say. She's calling us from Montclair. Dana, you're on the line.
Hi. I'm very frustrated and bothered by this whole incident. We have a young man that is dead. His funeral arrangements have been made. The person who is responsible for this young man's death has not been arraigned, has not been arrested, and is not being held accountable. I understand the frustrations of the police officers, and I more than certainly understand the frustrations of the people there in Missouri. But we need to hold this man accountable for taking a young man's life who was unarmed, was not doing anything but walking down the street, and allegedly, according to most newspapers, the officer didn't even know of the accusation of cigars being taken from somewhere. He just blatantly stopped them for no reason, and for jaywalking. He needs to be held accountable. He needs to be taken into the court system and be held responsible for this young man's life. People need to realize and remember that there's a young, beautiful African-American young man who was going off to college, now is dead and his life is over, and his mother and his family has to deal with all of getting all this attention taken away from what really matters, that there's a young man who's dead.
I would only add to what Dana was saying in that it's a tragedy and it needs to be investigated, but the officer deserves the full force of the justice system and his opportunity to make a defense in the same way that Michael Brown didn't get. You don't solve this wrong with another wrong. It's a process, it's a slow process, it's a painstaking process, but he's entitled to go through that process as part of the justice that everybody who wants justice for Michael Brown is arguing for.
I'm just telling you, Don, we're going to see this happen in Staten Island. We're going to see this happen in Missouri. There's going to be more flashpoints in this country. Different people, though, are going to look at justice different ways out of this, and that's the other part of the story we know from covering these things. Two people's idea on what is the suitable punishment or not completely depends on somebody's background in this.
Okay, but Richard, with all due respect, I know we're short on time here. You guys are not treated by the police the same way I am treated by the police.
No question.
And anybody that tells you different don't know what they're talking about, or they're just lying to you, or they're sugarcoating it. For the most part, you don't ever have to worry about your sons being killed by the police. That's something that every African-American male and African-American mother has to worry about. It's something that's part of the training of growing up. And I mean, and again, I return to the prosecutor. It's ridiculous. Yeah. This man should not be on this case, period. He shouldn't be the district attorney. Now you may say, oh, well, they voted for him. Well, and here's where you got to blame black people. The turnout is only 12% when they vote. Well, you can't complain if you're not voting.
And they represent about 2/3 of the population of Ferguson.
67%.
And the actual makeup of the police department is almost 100% white here.
Now, I wonder how that is. There are only 3 black police officers. I wonder.
I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this tomorrow night here. Gentlemen, thank you both very much. I will see you guys tomorrow at 6, but we got more on RFL. And I want you to keep your conversations going online. The phone lines are still jammed right now. So if you couldn't get through on the phone lines, go over to Facebook or Twitter and sound off on what's bothered you the most about this story relating to Michael Brown's death, and there's a lot to choose from. All right, we come back, we get into the legal questions here. Our legal panel will join us, and so many unanswered questions surrounding this case, and really, what happened here next with the officer who did pull the trigger, and what exactly is a grand jury as it relates to this process. Our panel will discuss those topics and much more coming up.